Hi, everybody. I am pleased to introduce to you Melissa, who has graciously said that she will chat with me kind of around the whole theme of mentorship. So, thank you, Melissa, for coming.
Hi, everybody.
I just want to start by asking you to just introduce yourself a little bit more fully and just kind of share your journey in early childhood and special education and where you are today.
Yeah, so my name is Melissa Mahoney. I wear many different hats in my life and in my career. I am the assistant director and inclusion specialist at a small preschool, private preschool in San Francisco. And I also teach at SF State in the undergrad SPED department. I'm also a parent myself to two young children. And I have been working with young children since as long as I can remember, since I was in high school. And it's taken many different paths, and I've worked in different settings, mostly as a preschool teacher. And then I moved into the role of assistant director. Ooh, I guess 5 years. This is my fifth year as assistant director here at the preschool. And um, yeah, I also, so at my preschool, the many hats that I wear are there's two of us on the admin team, so it's pretty small. And we have 15 of us on the staff. So there's 13 teachers and two of us on the admin team. I work with all of the teachers in curriculum development, supporting them and whatever they may need on a day-to-day basis. And I'll step into the classrooms when needed and when invited.
Mhm.
I work obviously with the director of the school in terms of, planning for the year. There's like different seasons in the school year that we have to plan for. And then I also work with the parents pretty closely. And that can be from, helping them figure out how to support their child at home. So I always have like an open door policy where they can call or email me anytime. And then I'm always part of the team if a child is diagnosed with a disability or has any support needs. So I'm usually the kind of go-to person for that, making sure that we're taking a team approach for that child. So.
That's great. A question that just came to my mind is what is approximately how many kids are at your preschool at one time?
Um, this year enrollment is a little bit lower because of COVID. We
Yeah.
wanted to keep classrooms on the smaller size. So we have just over 90 students.
Okay.
Yeah, and usually we have about 110 students.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know if I had had a sense of that.
yeah, so it's pretty small.
Yeah. So when you think about mentorship, how would you define mentorship or maybe characteristics of a good mentor?
Yeah, I that's one of my favorite parts of my role here at the preschool is being able to work with all of the teachers. I think that um, I try to embody many different characteristics when I'm mentoring teachers, and one of them is empathy,
Mhm.
and trying to be empathetic. So I came from being a teacher here at this school, so it's pretty easy for me to kind of understand where they're coming from because I was in that situation not too long ago. I also look at it as an opportunity to help the teachers or whoever I'm working with kind of find their own strengths, and through reflection. So if I'm going to maybe observe a teacher in the classroom, which I try to do periodically throughout the year,
Mhm.
rather than just kind of jumping into, well, this is what I noticed and this and this and this, I might ask them, like, how do you think that went? What were some of the strengths that you experienced? What were some of the challenge that you experienced?
Mhm.
Experienced? So I think that helping them kind of reflect on
Yeah.
themselves is another goal, that an intention of mine as a mentor.
Mhm.
Um, and listening. I do a lot of listening.
Yeah.
And then lastly, I really look at at my role as a mentor, as a guide and facilitator, someone
Mhm.
who doesn't hold all the knowledge, who knows everything, who's going to have a solution or an answer to every problem.
Mhm.
Um, More, I look at myself as a partner to help guide the teachers.
I think about how, like, when you're describing it, I just think about putting myself in the role of a teacher, how supportive that would make me feel if I had a mentor that I knew wasn't coming in like an evaluative or judging or like, like just telling me what I need to keep on doing, but rather that you just had that trust that they were going to help you, that they were here, going to come alongside you. It just makes me think about how much more willing they would be to be vulnerable with you, if you have that approach, and kind of empowering too, if you're kind of supporting their reflective teaching too. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah, that makes me when you think about what's informed your kind of your intentional decision of the kind of mentor you want to be, are is there someone or examples of you being mentored as
Mhm.
you have got to your place right now, that have been impactful, and maybe do you have an example of that?
Yeah, I can think of two people that come to mind. One was a friend that I made in the undergrad department at SF State in the CAD program. And we just had a class together, and we were colleagues, we were classmates. And she just was so dedicated to this field that it just inspired me so much. I had never met somebody like that before. Um, and it just got me really jazzed about anything early childhood. I mean, we had to commute to Marin, to the college there, for a class, an evening class, and we would commute together. And the whole time there and back, we would just talk about early childhood. And
Mhm.
so I ended up being able to work with her at two different preschools, even the preschool that I work at now. And I ended up, you know, she was a teacher and I was the assistant director. So it's kind of funny that I ended up being, in a way, her boss,
Yeah.
because I really just, looked to her to bounce ideas off of. Anytime I was struggling or had a challenge, I could call her and she would help me, you know, think about it in a different way. She was always there to listen. And so I think that informed my idea of mentorship, because we started out as friends,
Mhm.
and she wasn't like my boss, and there wasn't um, that power dynamic.
Mhm.
I really felt like I could trust her, and then I could go to her with anything. And she's just like a really positive person as well. And then the other person was the opposite. It was in my undergrad student teaching experience, and it was the lead teacher, and I guess she was like my supervisor. And I went into this class one day a week, for whatever hour, how many hours I had to be there to
Mhm.
meet my hours. And I'm definitely more of a quiet, observant person at first. And in our like week 3, it was like 3 weeks I had been there, and it was our first one-on-one meeting for her to like give me feedback. And she wrote it all down, and we had to create like an agenda, and
Mhm.
she filled it in. And in like the only thing I could see in the whole agenda in her feedback was that I had low affect. Um,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
so
Mhm.
it was like it was yeah, it was very disheartening when I read that,
Yeah.
and it just kind of made me feel like I wasn't being seen, I wasn't understood. Um, like she wasn't bothering to get to know me,
Mhm.
and my style and my approach. And
Yep.
so that definitely like, I think we started off on the wrong foot with that. And it just felt like I could never really trust her to go to her. Ended up being like fine in the end. And we got through it, or I got through it.
Yeah.
But I just always remember that the first thing that, um, her feedback to me was something negative
Yeah.
and wasn't even really trying to understand me,
Right.
um, because I wasn't low affect. I was just being observant.
Yeah.
So
How, like, I mean, that just shows you the power of mentorship too, because, and negative mentorship too,
yeah,
because that you remember that to this day and that it still impacts you just shows like, I guess it's just a good reminder of even in both formal or informal roles of mentorship, just the inevitable like impact that you can make on somebody for good or bad, right? To think about what it is. I also have a similar experience with a supervisor, a student teacher supervisor, and it was my first student teaching experience. And he I was in a grade 2 classroom, and he would do like verbatim transcripts of what I said as I was teaching. And so he would, which is kind of impressive now that I think about supervision, like that you would take that approach. So he would
yeah,
do like write down what I said. And then he would quote me and be like, what did you mean by this? Or I remember I said the word gonna a bit. He did not like that. So like then he started doing tallies of how many times I said, we're gonna do this.
mhm,
And he did tallies. And I just remember like I just dreaded his visits because it made me feel so insecure. And I remember my mentor teacher, who was great and it probably was like a good mentor experience there, but she just, I remember her after one time, she was like, you kind of talk like a robot when he comes, because I can tell you are so concerned with what
yeah,
you're going to say. So like it took away, it just makes me think about like if somebody says that, then all you're thinking about is that, and you're not focused on like
right,
best like connections and interactions with kids or like planning amazing learning opportunities. You just become so self-conscious. So yeah,
right.
thanks for sharing that.
One other story, I know that, we want to keep these interviews to a minimum, but when I started my master's program,
Mhm.
at SF State, I remember, I don't think you were my,
I
what are
don't
they
think
called?
so.
Anyways, my go-to person, but I
Yeah.
was really stressed.
Yeah.
I started actually here, the
Yeah.
preschool, as a teacher. I was getting married in like 3 weeks and starting grad
Yeah.
school all at the same time. And I remember coming to your office.
Yeah.
I think maybe I had a class with you. And so I was asking you about something and ended up, I think, crying because I was
Yeah.
so stressed out, which is not usually something I do.
Yeah.
And just you were just like, it's okay, we'll work it out.
Yeah.
And so that first impression definitely, and now of course you're, a mentor of mine. Um, and so that I think the first impression too is so important when you were like, it's okay, I'll support you, I've got you. And
Oh,
um,
I'm glad that was, I was hoping this was a positive memory. I'm glad. Isn't that a cool? It's actually, it is really awesome in that I feel like you are a mentor for me too. Like I feel like it's a cool example of somebody who's gone through the program, and
mhm,
then now we have the opportunity to work at this level. And it just, yeah, it makes me just think about how awesome instructors are that are in the field and then can kind of can contribute, because I think about how the impact that you're having on our students
mhm,
in this kind of instructor slash mentorship role and supervisor for student teachers. And yeah, it's just it's kind of a beautiful example of just how, yeah, the people that you work with and you can evolve into these different relationships and how awesome that can be.
mhm.
Yeah, I often talk about you actually just in terms of making it through COVID and stuff. And I was like, oh, it just was such a good experience to work with you and design classes. And I actually think that some of the people that will watch this video, you taught in preschool interventions in the spring as
Oh
well.
yeah.
So they
Hi
will
everybody.
know. Um, so when you think about like how you approach a mentoring relationship with like a new teacher that comes to your school and how you start that, I think
Mhm.
you've touched a little bit, but just thinking about some of the intentionality and what you try and bring to it. But how would you begin kind of that relationship as a mentor?
I definitely first start with getting to know them,
Mhm.
just on a personal level. So that, checking in about, their day, asking them questions about their family or their life, or, um, and then just even having them tell me about their classroom, talking about their students, because I just don't think that I can just jump into providing any real feedback before I've created a trusting relationship with the teachers. Um, and I mean, I love being a mentor, of course, but I really value the relationships that I've
Mhm.
formed with the teachers that I work with. Um, and then and then once I do observe and give feedback, it is structured in the sense that I let them know ahead of time, of course, and tell them that, I'm going to observe you and provide feedback. And I do this a lot for our newer teachers, and less so for our, more veteran teachers, um, unless they request it, of course.
Mhm.
And um, but once I structure it in the sense I'm going to observe you for an hour or 45 minutes or however long it may be, and then I'm going to give feedback, we'll probably do it either that day or the next day. After that structure is clear, it's pretty casual in terms of our conversation. Like I said, I always lead with, so how do you feel my like that time that I was there in the classroom went? What
Mhm.
were some strengths? What were some challenges? What are your goals going forward, related or not related to that experience that I observed? Um, and then I might give more specific feedback. So, like, I noticed that you did this. Can you tell me more about that? So I lead with curiosity.
Mhm.
A lot. I ask a lot of questions. So, oh, I noticed this happened with these two children, and you were on the other side of the classroom doing this. Like, oh, I'm curious more about the dynamic between those two children. And then we have like a deeper conversation about that, and then maybe something comes to light for the teacher, that instead of me saying like, oh, well, you know those two children were having conflict, why didn't you help them?
Right.
I try to, maybe I'm not thinking that, but I'm trying to shed a little bit more light on, like, oh, well, I'm curious, like, what was happening. That's just an example.
Yeah.
It definitely can, there have been times where I have to have harder conversations with teachers. And the approach that I take with that is just trying to be as honest and transparent as possible. So we had, I can remember a time where safety was a concern of mine. And we have a big nature program, where teachers are out in the forest,
Mhm.
in the Presidio with the children without being here at school. So they are really have to be safe, and is the most important thing. And yeah, I had to have a conversation with a teacher, actually many conversations with a teacher about safety. And I just say, like, this is a hard conversation, so I recognize that it is uncomfortable to have, and I just try to be as honest as possible, with then showing that I'm there to support them and
Mhm.
to come up with like tangible strategies that they can implement to, grow and improve in that area. um, so a big part of also my job is, just if we work in teams of two, so co-teacher model. We don't have
Mhm.
lead and assistant teacher. Whether or not you're new or not, this could be your first year, it could be your 10th year here, you're still a co-teacher.
Mhm.
So that that's also a big part of my role, is making sure that the, we call them marriages, are working and flowing, and teachers are communicating. So that is something I've learned over the years in this role is if a teacher comes to me with something about their co-teacher, rather than having our own dialogue about it consistently, because then once I open that door, they might come to me over and over and over again without ever actually going to their co-teacher. So that's another hard conversation that I have to initiate if there's something going on with co-teachers. So rather than letting it happen over and over again, I have a meeting with all of us, just to.
That just makes me think about how awesome that is part of your role to help these marriages or these co-teaching. Because I think about how often teachers are put into that kind of a relationship, but then there's like no support for that. Like it's just like, and you can see sometimes it works amazing because of the personalities, or they have the skills, or both of them have kind of the buy-in for it. But how often that is a really hard relationship, and that it would just be really beneficial to have kind of an ongoing support for that type of relationship. So I just think that's a really great thing, that a great model that you have.
Yeah.
It also just made me think about, as you were describing how you approach like a new relationship and having harder conversations, it makes me think about how your role really does blend from mentor to also kind of a coaching position a little bit. And then at times supervising as well, right? Like, because there are certain things that you are needing, like safety. So it's interesting how it blends. I feel like in our teacher performance expectations, and even in this class, we talk about like mentorship, coaching, supervision, and there is like different definitions that have been, but how in actuality, often there is a blend. And to make it effective, like in order to be a good job coach and coach in a coaching relationship, there is going to be an element of mentorship within there always too. Like it's interesting to me just to think of that, because I think you're describing a complex role. It makes me just think about that you are wearing lots of hats, even in just this role at your school, just in what you are taking on there, and also just how important it would be. So yeah, I think it's a cool model that I feel like, was this role that you are in right now, am I right that this role was kind of created in part because of your expertise, or was there somebody in this role already?
There was somebody in the role before who moved out of the Bay Area, and I worked closely with her.
Yeah.
She was the assistant director when I was a teacher,
Yeah.
so I learned a lot from her, and still call her to this day.
Yeah. Okay.
Because but I added on the layer of inclusion specialist.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
So is there anything else in terms of mentorship, or just something else in general that you want to share that we did not address?
Yes, let me see. I have just a couple notes that I wrote. I think that, well, one, for all of you in this class and who are thinking about being in a leadership role, it definitely is not as glamorous as it sounds.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing to note. And also, this is something that I strive towards, is to reflect on the mistakes that I've made, and not get bogged down by them, but really embrace any mistakes that I've made. Like, I remember my first year as assistant director, to a team really just didn't feel supported by the dynamic of their class, and I ended up having to kind of follow up with them at the end of the school year, and really reflect on the things that I could have done differently. And so that's definitely something I try to do on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
And then just an internal stance and way of being that I also try to embody is, being humble. And again, going back to like me not knowing everything is key. And then with that is really being curious rather than certain all the time. And I think
Mhm,
that that's okay, even if you're a leader, is to say, like, you know what, I don't know the answer to this and I need to find out, or let me think about it for a little bit and come back to you.
mhm.
Because yeah, it's hard once you are certain, it's hard to go back and change what you've said or what you've done. So any decision that I make, um, is takes a lot of thought behind it.
Mhm.
And same with anything that I say to the teachers and the families too. So
I think that's such good advice because I do think that especially I feel like especially in new positions when if you're taking on a new leadership role, but also I probably also if you're established, there is a sense like sometimes if you know you're the leader that you want to come across competent and you want to come across like that you have this clear vision. So I think it sometimes does end up then that people are trying to come off like they know everything or like they're gonna be able to do this. And I just love that idea of how like I feel like it just sets a whole climate if you're willing to say let's figure this out together or I'm not sure let's get some more resources. I feel like it is such a powerful model because then you're showing the teacher your teachers or whoever you're working with that it's okay to not know if you're kind of like exemplifying this partnership model, you're kind of exemplifying this problem solving like we're going to figure it out together. And it just makes me think about how much more they would be willing to come to you and be like, this is what I'm thinking about, or I tried this, it didn't work. And you're
right.
just setting this whole climate for like, I don't know, thoughtfulness. And yeah, I don't know. To me, that just would set such a beautiful climate as a leader too.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the way you just rephrase that.
Yeah, no, it resonates with me too, because I can see like sometimes in a new, if I'm put on a new thing or something, you just want to like it's probably also an internal thing where you want to prove that you deserve to be in that role or you want to
Right.
prove yourself to the other people. So there is like, I guess it just speaks to like that ongoing reflection that a leader or you just have to have to say like, no, that's not what makes a good leader. Like
Mhm.
it's okay to take time to get into a position or take time to understand a fuller context of what's going on
Yeah.
here. um yeah, and I liked, I mean, just in another discussion we were having, like I just feel like a big part of that too is to give people the benefit of the doubt
Mhm.
or like give them grace or like give them goodness, right? Like
Yeah.
to be like when things are coming up, especially inevitably issues or things that you have to address, to just err on the side of like they're trying their best, so how can I like come alongside them, to not have like that instinct to be like no way or I know better or this is
Right.
horrible.
Yeah.
Just seems like a really just such a key thing because it is, I feel like, yeah, most people are doing such the best that they can, and to have instead somebody that will come alongside them and partner and show that they're going to work with you just seems like such a powerful mentorship model.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we do with our young students, right? We
Yeah,
value them for who they are,
yeah,
and recognize that they learn differently, they move through the world differently, they approach everything differently. And so I think while there are expectations here at the school that I work at, it's okay to have it be a little bit, um, different for every person and every teacher. So,
yeah. Yeah, that's actually just a beautiful thought to think about too. Like if you're exemplifying that as the leader to the teachers, how that can like inevitably create like a climate and this like, yeah, like it just would filter down to also how they feel like they can be with the kids and allow
mhm.
them to learn too. Awesome, Melissa. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you for all your awesome questions.
Awesome.
All right, talk to you later.
Yeah.
Bye.